This is a basic process for solving equations. First thing you're going to do is distribute. Now, when you're distributing, or how do you know if you're going to distribute, is you're going to look for parentheses. If you see parentheses, there we go. If you see parentheses in the problem, you need to know that you're going to have to do distribution, and it should occur first. Once you're finished with distribution, you're going to do combining like terms. Now, sometimes we may see examples that we don't need to combine like terms. That's okay too. In fact, we may see problems that don't need distribution. Just like we did on the bell work, it happens. But if we need to do these, it's distribution, then combine like terms. It needs to be in that order. Then we look to use principles of equality to force zeros so that we can ignore those values. We're going to do this with either addition or subtraction. This will help us to isolate the variable. The thing is now, with the principles of equality, especially to force zeros, and today's the first time we're going to see this, we will be doing this to x terms. Okay, so we're going to see terms that have x's, and we're going to zero those out so that it will simplify the equation and it will isolate the variable onto one side of the equal sign. That's what we mean by isolate the variable. We only want it on one side of the equal sign. The fourth one here is, and this is usually what we do last, is use a principle of equality. That's division or multiplication, which we use to create zeros, specifically with the coefficient. Now, keep in mind that this coefficient, it needs to be positive, because sometimes what happens is the student can get to the end here, they'll see negative x equals, let's say 8, and they'll say, hey, there's my answer right there. Now, if you checked, you'd find that whatever the equation is, this wouldn't work. It would give you a false statement. The reason that is because the coefficient of x is actually a negative one. It was a phantom one there. So you'd have to use the division principle of equality to force this to become a positive one. Just divide both sides by -1, and you'd be done. So just be aware of that. It's not such a common mistake, but it's a mistake that happens often enough that I feel like I should address it right here. So again, the point of that was, if you do not see the 1 there, it is there, and you do not want to end the problem with a negative variable like we see here. Let's go on to this one then. Okay, for this one, I do see 2 sets of parentheses, so I am expecting 2 distributions. And what I also noticed from, just like we saw 2 problems ago, is I'm going to be distributing in this set of parentheses a -1, and in fact, I'll even show that 1x. So it's -1 times 1x's, which would be -1x's. And then also -1 groups of +3 would be -3. So that is that distribution. I also have the 7 to distribute into this set of parentheses. So that'd be 7 groups of 2x's, which is 14x's. And then also 7 groups of, again, that's a -2, which would be -14. Now the rest of this just drops, right? The 5 I can just drop, and also the equal sign stays in the same position. Okay, so that takes care of the distribution. Like we know, that's the process. Distribute, now look to combine like terms, no problem. I see that there are like terms, the 5 and the -3, which again, you just show us 5 minus 3, which is +2. And then my -1x. There were no other like terms with this -1x to combine, so I'm going to keep it there. And now I need to show the 2 is positive with a plus sign. Now again, at this point, I'm just taking a little detour, but don't forget, you cannot combine this -1x with this 14x's at this point. You can't just combine them directly. You have to use principles of equality when combining like terms across the equal sign. Now the rest of this though, the 14x minus 14, it drops. There were no like terms to combine on the right side. So this is my new equation. Still, it shouldn't be a problem. This one now is going to proceed exactly like the one we just barely did. So I'm going to identify. I want my x's on the left side, and then I will put my constants on the right side of that equal sign, the line. So then I look at each term. On the left side of this equal sign, I've got a -1x. Okay, that's an x term, so that's okay. The +2 is not an x term, so it has to, I need to zero that out by subtracting 2. But yes, if I do it one side, I need to do it the other side. So the -1x here is going to drop. 2 minus 2, as planned, that became a 0, so I can ignore it. And then the 14x drops as well. And then also -14 minus 2 would be, I almost forgot my x, but -14 minus 2 is -16. We're almost there. 2 more principles of equality will do this. So once again, I see I've got the 14x's, but it's on the number side of things. I don't want x terms with my numbers side. So I need to zero out that 14x by subtracting 14x's on both sides. Okay, so on the left, negative 1x's minus 14x's would be negative 15x's. And this should equal 14x's minus 14x's. That zeroes out as we had planned. And again, this term right here is a negative 16. It needs to drop as negative 16. Don't forget that negative sign. And then, last of all here is I want this coefficient to become a 1. I got 1x equals, and then I got, well, just make that a 1, right, by dividing both sides by negative 15. So negative 16 divided by negative 15. Let's see what the calculator gives us. Negative 16 divided by 15. Enter. So I got 1.06 repeating. And I hate that fraction, that decimal, because it looks like garbage. So I'm going to change that to a fraction by just pushing math enter, enter. And that will change it into a fraction for me. So that's 16/15. All right. Now, the last thing, just like we've been doing, I'm going to take the x's, replace them. I'm going to use the fractions because the decimal sucks. But 16/15, but for both x's, right? So on the left side, I've got 5 minus parentheses, and then in parentheses, 16/15. Close parentheses plus 3. Close parentheses, enter. And I got, let's see, I think I typed that in. I got 0.93 repeating. Let's see what we get on the right side. 7 parentheses, 2 parentheses, 16/15. Close parentheses, minus 2, close parentheses, enter. Yep, I got the same thing on the right side, 0.93 repeating, which is a true statement, right? So that ended up being true. And now I know that I have actually found the solution. Either one of these would work, but I like the fraction better. Okay.